Um, I'm Amy Menzer, Senior Project Manager with the Department of Planning. And I really appreciate you joining us this morning. We are ready to get started. So we're here today to talk about the Department of Planning's latest round of community improvement grants. And there are two deadlines in the course of this coming year. The first one will be November 10th, and then the second one will be on May 1st, 2026. There's a 1.8 million allocated for capital requests between 3,000, and your requests can be between $3,000 and $200,000. These requests the funding is intended to support the master plan, 2030 goals, and more targeted revitalization strategies that enhance livability within the county's urban-rural demarcation line. All right, doing this in a webinar is different than, oh, did you just do that, Tom? No, all right, okay. Sorry, guys. Trying to make sure I know what I'm doing here as far as advancing the slides. So this presentation is being recorded, so we can post it later, so we can all see how inept I am in managing a webinar. So first I want to mention our implementation team here in the Department of Planning. You've met me. I do a range of things here. I focus on community development and nonprofit capacity building. And that's really an area of expertise for me, is in organizational development. And then I also do grants management and other special projects. Dom Romeo, who some of you have probably interacted with previously on grants from the department, is project manager. And he handles some special projects and grants management with an emphasis on grants review and grants processing. Tom Zahetsky, Planner 2, joined us in June, and he is also focused on special projects and grants management with more of an emphasis on grants review and monitoring. So if you haven't met him yet, if you have a grant from us or you're hoping to get a grant from us, you're going to be interacting with him more. And for this grant, to sort of keep things streamlined and organized for our team, because we all kind of work together to manage the workflow, we want to encourage you to contact Tom, and his email is on the screen there. We're happy to talk to you on the phone, but we encourage you to email, because that enables us to keep track of who's contacting us and make sure we can get back to you and that we get your contact information to keep things moving. So I've been showing you some pictures of projects. So on this initial slide, there's a public space, park kind of space that is an example of an eligible project. It is not a county-owned park, which is an important distinction for this grant. And then the other space featured here is a Nepalese Association community building that was also funded with county capital funds in part. And some other pictures. This is a community garden in Turner Station on the top left. In the middle is a playground that's managed by the Islamic Society of Baltimore on their property, and we funded some lighting for that playground through a previous round of these community improvement grants. And a community sign that's an ever popular request from communities across the county, and we get it, why those are desired and needed, and that is definitely an eligible kind of project for these funds. We're looking to support community-based organizations that can help really implement aspects of the master plan and sort of more localized community plans and revitalization strategies within the URDL. We're looking for projects that are kind of ready to go and that can be implemented within 2 years of when you get your grant agreement. We're looking for projects that have a direct benefit to the community. And if your project is a larger project, meaning over $15,000, going to be asked to identify some measurable benefits for the project. So these are some other eligible projects. The Natural History Society of Maryland Museum on Bel Air Road has a capital grant from Baltimore County for some of its renovations that are happening right now. Moving the Essex Cube from its position on Eastern Boulevard to next to the Heritage Society of Essex and Middle Rivers Museum in their courtyard. That was a project funded with county capital dollars. And then here's another playground that is on property owned by the Jewish Community Center, and it is an ADA friendly playground, and that was also funded with county capital dollars. So these are examples of eligible projects with this kind of funding. And see, wall murals also eligible. I think I've covered the other items on this slide. Projects that are not eligible for funding as part of this pot. Anything that's going to be located in a county-owned park or county-managed park. The reason is County Rec and Parks has their own process for managing their property, prioritizing what improvements are needed, and deciding, on sort of new initiatives to propose. So if you're interested in proposing something that would be part of a county park, you need to talk to them first, and they'll be thinking about it in their own budget process, where they're also factoring in equity issues and thinking about the whole county and balancing a whole range of needs. Public and private schools, including higher education institutions, not eligible for this funding source. County schools reflect about half of Baltimore County's overall budget. And so this specific funding source is meant to offer improvements to communities that really aren't part of schools. And higher educational institutions have a lot of other potential funding sources, and we're really looking to support sort of smaller on the ground community-based organizations with these funds. Gated communities are also not eligible for this funding source for projects within a gated community because, we're looking for projects that have some level of public access. If you're not sure, just ask us, email Tom. A couple of other eligible projects here, the Bowley's Quarters Improvement Association Community Building received substantial capital support for improvements to their space, and then also their sign here would be another eligible source, another eligible project. And this mural on the side of a dry cleaners in Pikesville, that was also funded with some county capital dollars. As far as eligible applicants, you must be a 501c3, 4, or 6 organization to apply for funding from the county. The county is actually more flexible in this regard than many funders who really are only interested in thinking about 501c3 organizations. So I would say that applying for a county grant is often it's a good sort of first step for a small community-based organization, neighborhood association, or a larger nonprofit. You must be in good standing with the state of Maryland. So, and you don't need to spend $40 for a certificate from the state. Just screenshot your status at the moment you're applying. We will check your status again later in the review process before any grants are awarded or funds are paid out. But it's a baseline requirement. You will need to have recent financial statements that are right-sized to your organization, which means that we're not looking for a 40-page 990 and an audit from a umbrella community association. if you're a larger nonprofit, if you have been around for a number of years and you have staff, yeah. If you've gotten substantial grant funding in the past, yeah, we're probably going to be looking for you to send us those kinds of documents, along with your most recently completed fiscal year profit and loss and balance sheet. However, if you're a smaller organization, or an organization that's, maybe just founded in the last year or two, it could be that what, you're sending us is 3 months of bank statements and 3 months of treasurer's reports. That's what I mean by right sized. And again, if you have questions, just ask us. But we're obviously just looking to be able to document that, of the funding that you do receive, that you're good stewards of those funds. And then you're going to need the property owner's permission. In some cases, like Bowley's Quarters, they own the property. In many other cases, the improvement is on sort of a publicly visible location, like where this mural is, but they didn't own the building, so they got permission from the property owner to make this improvement that is very visible and has a benefit to the community.
So.
And now, turning it over to Tom to tell you more about all the gory details. Thank you.
So there is a hub website which has been sent out alongside the email inviting everyone to these webinars. There will also be a QR code and a link again later on, but there's a bunch of things that you'll need to gather and have when you start the application. Within that website, there is a link to the online survey. It's a survey form, quote unquote, but it is the application. It will ask you for a bunch of information, including the county application for financial assistance, which is linked in the application. So once you get to the application, you can click it, you'll get a fillable PDF to go through and then reattach when you're done. Same with the project budget. It'll be a fillable PDF again. If you've applied for county grants before, you'll have seen these, you'll have worked with them before. It's pretty straightforward. But if you have any questions, as always, just reach out to us and we'll be happy to help you go through it. Additionally, you'll need a board of directors list for your organization. You'll need financial statements, which Amy's just talked a little bit about just before, as well as the written permission of the property owner and the screenshot showing you're in good standing. There's also several supplemental questions that include telling us a little bit more about your organization's capacity, who you are, what you've done before, as well as what your project is, what you want to achieve by it. And I'll touch more about that in a little bit. Additionally, if you are not a 501c3, C4, or C6, you can work with an organization that is and could serve as a pass-through for your grant. So you'll need to include information about what your partner organization is, who they are, and their status. Additionally, if your project will be done on a public right-of-way, there is a county citizen-generated request form, which again is a fillable PDF, but if you're doing any work on county-owned land, you'll have to submit that as well and get permission from the county agency that owns the land. Additionally, and that applies to state agencies too, if you're looking to do a project on state-owned land. Additionally, some properties or land that you want to do a project on will be subject to Landmarks Preservation Commission and Design Review Panel. That's something just to keep in mind as you go through the application process, but you will not be required to receive approval before applying for a grant. If we go forward with your grant, we will help you with that process to get approval from the state and from the county to conduct your project in potentially selective areas. So some more guidelines for all projects. So projects are split between Tier 1, which is $3,000 to $15,000 requests, and Tier 2, which is $15,001 to $200,000 requests. All projects must be aligned with the Master Plan 2030 and the goals within that, and they must improve quality of life within the urban-rural demarcation line. If you have questions about where that is or want to know whether your location is, just reach out and we'll be happy to help. Again, all proposed projects must be capital, so they must be not movable and aimed with the design to last 15 years or more. So things such as signs, murals, building improvements, those kinds of things are things that are more mobile, such as equipment for a community festival or a community event, are not. Some of the supplemental questions that I mentioned in the last slide include how the project will implement one or more goals of the master plan. And this applies to all Tier 1 and Tier 2 projects. There are some more Tier 2 project requirements that I'll touch on in the next slide. Additionally, who will be most directly served by the project include the geography of your area, the demographic groups that will benefit it. So if it's a community playground, you'd mention that it benefits the children of the area. We also need to identify how the project is open to the public and benefits the overall community. So this kind of goes back to the public good, public benefit of all projects that we're looking to see. We'll also want to know how the project is supported in the community, and this can be something such as a letter of support from community organizations, or just identifying that there's a lack of this amenity that your project will provide in the area as it stands. Once again, you'll need to provide proof that you have control of the site, whether that's a letter from a private landowner or a public landowner. You'll also, if it's public, again, need to fill out the county citizen generated request form. All forms that we'll need you to fill out are available on the application, so you don't have to go looking for them in some third-party site. And if you can't find it or have any trouble, let us know and we'll help you find them. For larger projects, which is anything more than $15,001, you also must go a little more into detail about how your project will benefit the surrounding community. The way we're hoping you can do this is to go through a more targeted small area plan or small local development plan, such as a sustainable community plan, a small area plan, revitalization initiative, such as a Main Street organization plan, a CDO strategic plan, or a Baltimore Regional Neighborhood Initiative plan, and then kind of identify some area or goal identified in those projects and connect it to your in those plans and connect it to your project. We'll also hopefully see that your project builds upon other projects either underway or recently completed in the target area to have kind of a leveraging effect to keep developing your area and revitalizing it if need be. We also are hoping for larger projects you can identify quantifiable measures that show the benefits of your project to the community. So we have a couple examples there. For example, a mural in a commercial district will increase the visibility of the district to draw more foot traffic, draw more commercial revenue for local businesses, and to draw more volunteers for continued beautification efforts in those areas. The improvements to a community building, for example, will reduce energy bills and maintenance costs, which will allow your community organization to put on more events and do more good in the community. It will also make your area a nicer place to live and will increase the participation of events once you have this beautiful beautiful rehabilitated community building. It brings people to it and establishes a better sense of community. If you want to install a trail or some kind of public art that can connect more residents with recreation, that's something that can be quantifiable. Additionally, the public health goals, such as the increased use of parks, increased use of recreational space, and increased access, can all lead to better community health outcomes. One other thing we'll be looking for, especially for larger projects, is evidence of other funding sources, either that you've applied for or have committed from other organizations, such as the state or a foundation grant. We'd also like to see evidence of your grantee having dealt with larger grants before, or at least smaller grants that have some kind of organizational capacity to put on and go through with larger projects. We also want to see that you have working relationships with other community-based groups in the project area, so hopefully you can use what you've learned in these spaces and these projects to help other organizations within your area continue to benefit the surrounding areas as well. So another application requirement is we are requiring all organizations intending to apply for the grant to meet with us and our team before you apply. We want to make sure that we kind of have an overview of what you're going for and that your project is eligible before you go through the application process, because we don't want you to waste time and spend time if your organization is potentially limited on projects that are ineligible or won't get approved. To schedule a meeting, please email me. My email is there, tsuchecki@baltimorecountymd.gov, and provide who you are, what your preferred method of contact is. So ideally email. Generally, we're going to try to keep all our communications to email, so we have written records of it, and to make sure we're all on the same page. And we'd also like a brief summarization of what your project is. It can be a couple sentences, just kind of a general overview when we have our conversations and in the application, you'll be able to give us way more detail. We just want to make sure that we're all on the same page and that your project is one that you should be going forward with applying for before you start that process. These appointments will be scheduled as you reach out, so just reach out, give some availability. I'll work with our calendars and our end to make sure we can find a time that works for everyone. And again, if you have more questions about the funding opportunity, potential projects, anything that you're looking for, please reach out and we'll be happy to set up a time to talk, even if it's not a pre-application meeting, just to make sure we can help you create the best projects possible. Once you submit your application, so there will be 2 funding rounds. First one is the deadline is November 10th. The second one is May 1st of next year. You'll expect to hear with us within a week just about the completeness of your application. We want to make sure you have everything that we need. If you're missing something, we'll reach out at that point. But ideally, the sooner you can submit your application, the sooner we can go through your completeness check and just to make sure that we aren't missing anything that would potentially affect your ability to receive the grant. Once we finish that 1-week process, within a week, we'll start to want to schedule a site visit. So all projects that submit an application will have a site visit. Some of us will go to visit your site to make sure you can kind of talk through us and show us what your project will look like. It's good for us to be there on the ground and make sure that we can kind of envision how your project will go through. So those will be scheduled within the 3 weeks following the application deadline. So for the November 10th deadline, we're hoping that we can get to visit everyone before Thanksgiving. If not, some might be pushed to that week after. Like that kind of goes between the last week of November and the first week of December. Just kind of what we're looking for in the grants. No project, we don't really expect anyone to meet every single one of these goals below because your projects will be different and not all of them can do all of that. But we're really hoping to make sure to see that you have the capacity to implement the project. And the way to show this is to tell us about some of the projects you've managed in the past. And if not, just how you plan on implementing this one, what the time frame is, what steps are for completing the project. We also want to make sure your project is clearly defined and have clearly defined goals and benefits, so we know that you have a plan for how you'll get through it before the project begins. We also want to make sure that projects will have visible, tangible improvements to the local community, whether in quality of life, either if it's in a residential neighborhood or more commercial area. We want to make sure that the project is aligned with current community plans, initiatives, and other projects that might be going on as we stand. We also want to make sure that the projects advance equity and inclusion. So one of the things we'll be looking for is to somewhat evenly distribute projects throughout the county. So all of the projects won't be going towards one area. We want to make sure that everywhere in the county is getting some benefit from this funding round. We also want to make sure that, or are hoping to see that projects that your organization puts on can be replicated in other areas of the county and that we won't have to start from scratch every time we do a project, so we can kind of leverage what we've learned from your project into other ones in the future. We also want to make sure that your organization can work and leverage your capacity along with other local organizations and make sure that there's a county-wide benefit to as many of the projects as possible. And we're also hoping that from going through this project, it can help your organization better be equipped to manage projects in the future, and we can keep working together and continue to go through with more community improvement projects going forward. One other thing to note is that you are eligible to submit more than one application, but we are going to look to give as many applications as possible funding, so you're unlikely to get a second project approval unless we have extra money left over at the end. So here is the website. You can scan the QR code or you can take a photo. I don't know if you'll be able to copy paste it from this, but this is the hub website that shows this community improvement grant opportunity and other ones that come along. And once again, here's my email. I'm sure a lot of you have it by this point, but feel free to email me with any questions or comments or requests for meetings or anything else you can think of as the project goes along. And now this is a time for questions.
So yeah, I was thinking I'll stop sharing this and just, yeah, if people have questions, if you want to either write them in the chat, which I think Tom can see. I'm not sure if I can see.
I can see questions in the chat. And if you put your hand up, I can unmute you. or you may be able to unmute yourself. Ashley, yes.
Good morning. How are you? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you for the presentation. I'm here representing the Water's Edge Community Association, which is still in the process of applying for its 501c3. However, we're able to use the Rec Council here as our fiscal sponsor, perhaps. I was curious your point about we need to demonstrate prior experience with grants management. Basically, we have none because we haven't had our association has none because we're just now getting our 501c3. However, I'm working on it and I'm very experienced with grants and other folks are as well. Does that count? Does personal experience count?
Yeah, yes, I would say both the experience of who's going to be involved in sort of managing the project for the organization is important. And also, if you're using a pass-through organization, if they have experience managing grants, that's also helpful. And then beyond that, I guess I would say it sort of depends on, what's the project you're looking to do. In general, sort of newer organization or an organization without a lot of direct experience, we would tend to say, shoot for the smaller grants to start out. But that doesn't mean you can't look to do a larger project. And that's part of what the pre-application meetings are about is, being able to go into detail and discuss kind of what you're looking to do and more of those details. So.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you.
Another question from the chat. If we use a pass-through 501c3 organization, how does that affect the responsibilities of the organization helping?
So the organization helping being the pass-through organization, I assume, they legally are the ones responsible. So if you are serving as a pass-through, you need to be able to have confidence and ensure that the work of the organization, that you have adequate documentation, basically, for all the work that's going to be happening. And, if the county pays out funds to you as the pass-through, because that's how it will work, we need to see proof of payment. We need to see invoices, for every dollar that's spent with grant funds. And typically what we'll be doing is, because we know we're dealing with small organizations that don't have, like huge amounts of money in their bank accounts, typically, we are typically willing to forward fund at least some of the balance of a project, perhaps 50% of the cost. But then before we can pay out the rest of the funds, we're going to want to see documentation of that first 50% was properly spent. So that's kind of the balancing act for us and for the pass-through organization. So there is a little bit of work for the pass-through organization to manage the project. And that's something that you should work out with the organization that you're helping, is kind of who's going to work with who and how you're going to coordinate that. What's your communication process going to look like? Okay, sorry, I see another question about does the nonprofit have to report this normally to the IRS? No, that's not really a thing. I mean, what you would need to, it would be part of your financials. So, you would need to report it with your normal tax filings that you received X amount of income and how, but it wouldn't be getting used for any any use that's not eligible for a nonprofit, because we're not interested in funding any uses that aren't eligible for a nonprofit to spend money on. So you will have to account for it in your regular, however you do your accounting. Tom, I'm getting a question. I don't know. Is there a final report portal online yet for previous Baltimore County community improvement grants? Do you want to tackle that one? We decided to split off and have a separate webinar on that question to avoid confusion at this moment. But Tom, do you want to address that one?
Yeah, so we are in the process of finalizing a new final reporting process that will be using a similar template to this application through the same kind of software. We'll be hosting webinars later this month on the 22nd, I believe. I'll double check. And that'll go over the final reporting for previous grants. And we're going to start implementing a quarterly reporting system that will work similarly, but we will send an email out about that shortly to put that on everyone's calendar. And that'll also be how the reporting for this grant works.
Yeah, and so for all of our grants moving forward, there will be quarterly reports as well as the final report for tracking kind of where projects are so that we can help troubleshoot things as needed, and also so that we can make sure that we can, get before and after pictures, which are helpful for us in making the case for more funding for programs like this program we're talking about today. And also should be helpful for all of your organizations to be able to share those photos with the community and build excitement and promote transparency about what you're doing. So, and I see Tom just posted in the chat about the webinars on the reporting formats. Will be on October 21st at 10 a.m. and 6:30 p.m. So the award decision timeframe, Tom, I don't mean to be dominating the Q&A here. The previous round was our first attempt to do these grants, at least in recent memory, with the planning department, and there were some hoops internally that we were dealing with, as well as our own uncertainty about how to best review the projects, which are all so different from each other. It's very hard to have like one scoring rubric, for example, for such a vastly different projects. So what we are aiming for is to get the recommendations from the planning department to the next level beyond the planning department within 45 days of that deadline of November 10th. Now, obviously, there's some holidays in there that may cause a little bit of a delay, but we're hoping to hit that 45-day time frame. And then basically after the new year, we expect the projects to proceed through the county's normal grants review process, which includes a sort of cross-departmental review committee that basically they review all grants that cycle through the county. And then they also go to county council, which has the option to pull a specific grant to ask questions about it, and that's called a 14-day notice period. So basically after the new year, we expect, that process may take, because of holidays, and it could be that I would say probably 4 to 6 weeks for it to get through that process, and then we'll be into the grant agreement stage. So you should expect to hear about grants that if you apply on November 10th, we're expecting and hoping to be able to announce actual grant awards in the spring, like mid to late March or beginning of April at the latest. And part of that timing is very deliberately designed so that if you are also planning to apply for state revitalization programs, you will be in a position to show that you have a funding award from Baltimore County that you can use, and mention that in your grant application, and have a letter of commitment from us. The payouts are likely, you may not get the money in your bank account until late April, early May. But anyway, that's a little more detail on the sausage making, but that's that's sort of why, part of why that timeline is in place.
Medea had to answer your question about parking lot and landscape improvements. Generally, those are eligible, but talk to us more about the specifics of what your project entails. Yes, Nancy, I can send you the presentation.
We're also planning to post it on the webpage. Anything else? So there's a question about community parks and whether they're eligible. It really depends on what kind of a park it is. If it's a park that's owned by Baltimore County, County Rec and Parks, if it's managed by County Rec and Parks, it's not eligible for this funding source because there are other parts of Baltimore County's own bureaucracy that are, funding and managing improvements to those parks. If it's a privately owned park or it's owned by a community-based organization, it's likely to be eligible. So if you're not sure, just ask.
It probably would be easier for me to send the presentation to all attendees, but I don't have all of your emails. Sorry.
If you want to email Tom and ask for the presentation, then sorry, Tom, you'll get a bunch of emails.
I am more than happy to email it individually to all of you, so don't worry about that.
And like I mentioned, it'll be on the webpage for the grant. Should I share that again so people can?
Yes.
Am I sharing it now?
Yes, I also put the link to the website in the chat, and
Thank you.
you should be able to hyperlink and just click right to it. No, Laura, the webinar on the 21st is about the reporting process that we will be implementing for current and future grants. You're welcome.
Tom, are you still getting questions in the chat? For some reason, I can't see the chat now that I'm sharing my screen.
Nope, I think people are pretty much heading out. Thank
They're
you
done.
all again once more for attending, and we are looking forward to hearing and working with you going forward.
Thanks, everyone.